So now we've reached a point where we should briefly touch on safety in life science research. So as we've said before, life science can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a lab. When we do research investigations, not in a science lab, we call it field work. So field work is scientific research that takes place in a natural setting rather than in a lab. And when you're out in nature, there can be dangerous elements, and so the scientist needs to know the risks and then how to stay safe. So safety in the lab, you'll oftentimes see these safety symbols, and they help recognize and avoid dangerous. And so just a little mouse indicates an animal hazard. The blade here tells you that something is sharp. With the glassware, we need to be aware of maybe heated glassware. If you see the eye, you need to make sure you're wearing eye protection. All sorts of these come into play when we do labs. So some basic lab safety rules is you need to make sure you're wearing closed-toed shoes. If you have long hair, you have it back in a ponytail, so it's out of your face. You need to be wearing PPE, which stands for personal protective equipment. And examples of PPE would be like goggles, aprons, gloves. And so not every time you're in the lab requires this type of PPE, but you need to make sure that you are aware of when PPE is needed. Make sure you're never working alone. No eating or drinking in the lab. A lot of chemicals look and smell like water, but they're not water. You need to make sure that there is no horseplay going on in the lab. You need to take the lab experiments very seriously, and you can't be doing any unapproved experiments. We probably won't have to deal with this, but if you need to add acid to water or dilute an acid, you always add the acid to the water, and then when you pour the acid, you need to pour it slowly. Make sure you never smell an item directly. You need to use your hand to fan the vapors towards your nose. Make sure you don't point an open end of a test tube towards anyone. You don't know what gases are being given off or what could happen or spill out of the test tube. Make sure you clean up spills immediately. Dispose of any lab waste according to your teacher. Some of it can go down the drain or in the garbage. Others need to be handled and neutralized by me. And then you need to clean up your materials and make sure you wash your hands when you are done. If you're in the field, your rules in the field are going to depend on where you are actually at. So example would be like a botanist studying prairie vegetation may come into contact with plants that can cause an allergic reaction or maybe bee stings. And so she or he would need to be prepared with, say, an EpiPen or some anti-itch creams. If you are out in a river or pond, the water may be contaminated with microorganisms. If you're outside, extreme weather, tornadoes, thunderstorms, they can just come up all of a sudden. And so you need to be prepared for all of those. So in case of an accident, you need to tell me immediately. Don't try to hide it. You will be in more trouble for trying to hide it than for actually telling me what happened. And you must report all accidents because as a 7th grader, you might not know just how big of a deal your little accident is. So you need to make sure you're telling an adult.